Welcome everybody, and we are recording. I've got to keep half an eye on any other people join. So yeah. Well, today uh, I'm only going to briefly share this, and then I'm going to share it for a minute. But our next step in the course was to look at the moon. Yeah, and so we'll be starting here, uh, looking at the moon and well, the soul, and and then we'll switch over and hmm, uh, wait a minute, what happened? I was just trying to show these slides. Maybe I have to yeah. Can you see that one with the florals, lavender and yeah? Okay, well. Then in the context of the moon, we'll take a look at lavender, rose, and neroli. But I think before we do, I thought it would be nice to start, and also like to introduce you to Nasli from Turkey, who's joining our small group. uh, so. And I think I mentioned Sue Morris from Pennsylvania is also an astrologer. And I think even though I'm not where I usually am at the moment, but I did, I pull it out. I did bring with me Sue's book, actually. Yeah. So, this is her book, Sense of Self, The Alchemical Blending of Aromatherapy, Astrology, and Botanical Perfumery. Yeah. And yeah, there's the back cover. And I love it. I love it because and I know Sue mentioned that she was helped by Dana Driscoll as well, and with the overall look of it. And I think it's just fantastic. I think it really it's nice and succinct, but also somehow really complete. And it covers a lot. Look at this. You open it up and you get the temperaments. See, like, isn't that so nicely, succinctly explained? Just like, and I've been already mentioned the temperament. And the great thing is as well, of course, it's it's integrating essential oils, so there's some lovely blends as well. So, but we're humbled Sue is with us, and thanks. And then Deborah Wales from England, and now in Mendocino, which I know is a lovely place. I know you have got a lot of experience, haven't you, with product making and different projects you were doing in Italy, right? If you're on mute, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm no expert like Sue, sorry. But yeah, I created my own skincare line about 13 years ago now. And I don't know why I still sell it privately. I mean, to small clients, because I feel like what with everyone doing organic stuff and everyone loves it. I'm sure I could have done more with it than what I did do. But
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know how to blend it in with all the other things I do, yoga therapist and consciousness, and it's like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anyway, we're glad you're on our main course as well. And then Christine from England also. Do you know what? I don't know why. I kind of, for some reason, I got in my head confused about exactly where you were again now. Are you in South London or I'm probably completely wrong. Can you remind me, Christine?
I'm in. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm in Hemel Hempstead in Hertfordshire. I mean,
Okay.
I'm from London. I'm from London, but
Oh,
I
okay.
sort of moved out to Hemel about 12
Yeah.
years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
because I think
Yeah.
you know Hertfordshire quite well, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, I know because that's near Welling, and Welling Garden City, where my parents came from, and
Yeah.
just up the road. Yeah,
Mm.
but and you did our course in London, the aromatherapy. When was that again?
I think it was 2007.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jenny, can you remind me where you live again?
I am in Florida. I'm in Tampa.
Oh,
Um,
right. Okay.
yeah, but
I
previously for
forgot
Pennsylvania,
that.
I lived in Pennsylvania before I came here.
Oh,
So
right. Okay.
I'm curious where
Yeah.
Sue is, and then Oregon before that.
Oh,
But
okay.
but we
Yeah.
were right
Well,
off
what
the.
part of Pennsylvania were you?
We were in Lower Bucks County, like Yardley area.
Right.
Yeah.
Is
So
that near you, Sue?
yeah, where are you? Yeah,
No.
you're
Okay.
central.
Yeah.
I think you're central.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in exact center of the state, near, not too far from Penn State.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I drove all the way across to visit my parents in Ohio quite a few
You passed
times.
right by me.
The whole state. And I don't know. Do you know Stella Gabriel, who lives in
Yeah.
Tampa? She was,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Scylla. Sure. Sure. I did a class with her there
yeah,
before. Yeah. She's
yeah.
great.
Her
Yeah.
daughter's my massage therapist. She's
Her
retired, but
daughter's.
uh, a massage therapist.
Nissa. You mean Nissa?
Nissa's, yeah, my friend.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you say she's
because she's
retired
cool.
from the doing massage? You mean? Sorry, did you say she's retired from massage?
Scylla
Nissa
is
was? Oh, Scylla. Okay, no, I know Scylla is,
not
but
not
not
Nissa.
Nissa. No, no, no. Okay, yeah.
Scylla's
Well,
retired.
tell her I said hi when
Nissa's
you talk.
going strong. Yeah,
When you see Nissa,
I
tell her I
will.
said hi.
I
Yeah,
will.
thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I will. Yeah, her
yeah.
wife is my acupuncturist. They keep me sane.
Oh, wonderful. That's
But I wanted to
fantastic.
say
Yeah.
I made a lunar deck too on essential oils and the eight
Oh,
phases
ah,
of the cycle. And
and
I
eight
did and what I
seasons.
did
What
the
did you say?
eight phases,
Yeah. Okay. Every
right?
year.
The
Right. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
the and on using oils and acupoints to embody
Oh.
each phase.
Oh. Wow.
So
Wow.
playing with the
Yeah.
Wow.
energetics.
I'd
Um,
love to hear more about that. Yeah.
so I love I feel like I'm with my people here.
Oh, well, that's
I
nice.
can't
Yeah.
wait to read Sue's book too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good
So
day to be because you're doing the
I'm
moon,
excited.
so yeah. But
That's why I
Nas,
mentioned the deck. Yeah. I was like I'm a lunar lover. So I'm excited
how many
about
cards
today's
are in the
class.
deck, by the way?
85?
Whoa. Wow. A lot of cards. That's amazing.
Well, it's kind of about like what like the each phase. It's really multi-layered. If I
Yeah.
get a chance, I'll grab it and I'll pop a card up. But it talks about like where they are, like, and then like kind of what the angles mean, and then it's kind of teaching yin yang theory, honestly.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's
And
interesting.
um, because that's what the lunar cycle, all cycles are, right? And
Yeah. True.
um,
Wow. Yeah.
and then I have some that just explain what the energy of each phase is, and then how what oils go and what acupoints and why, and then like a tiny
Wow.
ritual with each one. So it's like it's body, it's mind, body, and spirit layers for all of it.
Yeah. That's
So and
amazing.
each
Yeah.
phase has 5 cards. So it's just fun. It's what I did when I was transitioning from
Right.
Pennsylvania to Oregon or Tampa because I needed
Yeah.
something to keep my brain sane.
Is it available to purchase the Lunar deck?
You can. It's on Amazon actually,
Yeah, okay.
under the Lunar Love deck. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll have a look.
hmm Yeah.
I think I was I was thinking how I think how when you talk, if you talk, I don't really think in this way that the planets have a direct effect on us, but I think the moon more than any of them does. on our body, our whole energy, so that's really interesting. By the way, Debs, can could I'm going to make you co-host. Is that okay? Only because, yeah, I'll tell you why. It's okay. You don't have to present or anything. All it is in case my internet goes down,
Right.
then the meeting won't be lost, and I can just rejoin. So I'm
That's
just going to. I'll tell you why. Because
You'll ask me to go all techie.
no, it's okay. All you have to do is, be with it. Just I've made you co-host, so that's all that means. That it'll just carry on, and
I'll put that
maybe
on my resume.
yeah, because I'm not where I usually am, and although where I usually am is not trouble free, when in Groveland, if I have a break in the internet, then I've got quite a strong 5G connection, so I can rejoin again using my cellular, quite easily. Here, yesterday, when we were having Ola for our monthly meetup, were you there, Debs? I can't remember. But anyway, it was really good. And
Was it good?
yeah, it was good. Anyway, you got the recording. So, but
Yeah.
I lost connection. I was able to rejoin, but luckily AC was co-host, so she could carry on with it. It didn't really matter too much. And also, she took over the recording. But anyway, I just noticed a little thing said your internet is unstable. So I'm hoping nothing, won't happen, but I just to prepare you if that does. And then maybe if I disappear, then maybe just chat, for 5 or 10 minutes, hoping I'll rejoin you. If you give me 10 minutes, very often I can rejoin you, right? So carry on until, I don't know. What did you say, Debs? I didn't quite catch that.
Me, I said we'll amuse ourselves. We'll.
Yeah. Well, in England, you
Am
say.
I muted? No.
No, you're not,
I'm not
muted,
muted.
but there was a slight delay. I don't know. It
Yeah,
might
I
be
know.
my internet. It might be my internet. I don't know. But it's like say in England in the class, you say talk amongst yourselves. When they say that. But anyway,
Yeah.
Nasli, please tell us again how you came to natural healing, your journey. Before we really make a start, I'd just like to introduce you to her, and so please.
Hello, everyone. Loves from Turkey. My name is Nazlı. I'm sorry about my English. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm a general surgeon. I'm an MD, but I didn't solve my problems, my health and psychic some problems. Then I take a journey. At first, I met breath therapy, and then energy and the other healer system. Now I am a licensed acupuncturist in my country, and I am an aromatherapist, and I combine like Jenny aromatherapy and acupuncture. I'm working approximately 9 years in my office, and my acupuncture practice based on 19% with essential oils, braid therapy and essential oils, and the other things changed my life and my vision. I'm not I didn't have any knowledge about astrology, but I'm a great fan of Gabriel, and one voice from my heart I listen, and this voice said me, please join this course. Maybe I can't understand your conversations exactly, or I can't understand what the astrology and the others. But I'm very happy to with you, wonderful people. Thank you.
Nice.
Oh, thanks, Nasli. Thank you.
That's
Um,
really
I'm having a bit of delay, so I hope I'll be okay. But I wanted to start by before I pull up my outlining of the moon, and of course you've got the slides. I thought it'd be nice to go around, and I'd love to hear from each person what the moon is to you, even if you don't know a lot of astrology, what the moon is to you in a couple of minutes, you know. And it can be more astrological, or it can just be intuitive, or anything really. Sue, would you like to start? Because I know, of course, you have so much knowledge.
Well, for me, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Can you hear me? Okay.
yeah.
I have a fully aspected moon in my birth chart, so the moon is everything to me, and I try to live by the cycles of the moon and activities that I plan, and especially it's gardening season, I take that 100% into account, the moon phase and sign, but the moon is the essence of who we are, and when I do perfumery, the moon is the bass note. So it's like the heartbeat or the rhythm of our lives is the moon. It sets the tone for everything, I think. Above all else, it's the most personal of personal planets. And so we can learn a lot about ourselves and our health, and the moon just teaches us how to understand how we relate to people emotionally in a nurturing way, how we respond to things, and mostly a lot of what my book is about is remembering who we are. And so the moon helps us to remember who we are at a very deep, emotional, intimate level. And so I think it's just really amazing to get to know your moon sign and all the complexities that go along with that.
And what's your moon sign? Because we can each share that, you know.
It's Pisces.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Intuitive. Great. Thank you. Jenny, would you like to go next and share what you thank you so much, Sue. That was brilliant. Jenny.
Mm, I love what you just said, Sue, and that is the remembering who you are. I feel like is so powerful, and like all of the oils do too. I feel like the oils help you remember who you are, and astrology helps you remember who you are. So like the three things are so well matched, which is why I love this group, and this container for all of the above. I feel like is really powerful. My moon, my moon is in Virgo in my third house, but I'm also Cancer rising, so I can't escape the moon. I'm so tidal. It's terrifying sometimes. But it's, I think the more that I've leaned into it or accepted it, it's good. My son's in Taurus too, and it's like I think I can't remember if it's sextile or trining the moon. So it's I'm a body worker. I'm a body worker and an
Uh-huh.
acupuncturist, and I love oils, and so it's the moon is anything that gets everything I feel like needs to be translated through the body in order to feel it, to understand it. For me personally, I don't understand people who don't do that. Or I do understand them, but it's like I don't. The people I connect with the most are usually the ones that like do some sort of body work or herbalism or earth based and just body based things that live in their bodies or are interested
I
in.
relate to that so much because I have Virgo rising and Venus in Taurus, so I completely resonate with what you said.
Yeah, yeah. It's the plant dance people.
Hmm.
I feel like, and I went to the Naha conference and last whatever it was in Tampa, and it was so nice. All the plant people were like just delightful. So anyway, the moon, I love the moon. And one of the things I love about the moon is that she always catches you by surprise. Like yesterday, I was walking into school with my son, and she was out as we were walking in. And I was like, "Oh, hi." Oh, hi, I mean, you can follow her, and then she helps you remember and forget. Like you remember and forget and remember and forget. And you could be anywhere on the planet. And, um, I've been traveled the world, and I think a lot of you have too. And it's like wherever you go, the moon's always there. You can see her and look up, and we share that. I think around the world, we share the moon, and it's such an ancient part of our somatic history and psyche. And it's ancient and powerful. So I will shut up about the moon. I love the moon. She's my friend, probably more than the sun. And I'm like, I have to remember that I also have to be my Taurus sun. Or maybe that just comes naturally. I don't know.
Did you say your cards were on Amazon?
They are. I put a link in there too it has
Oh,
they're on
great.
my
Okay.
website.
Oh,
And I'll
good,
pull them
good, good.
out when we take a break. I'll go grab them. I thought I had
Oh,
them
yeah.
handy.
Okay. That would be
And I'll show
great.
you a
Yeah.
couple of them.
Is that with like Beltane and the Celtic, right? Are those were you referring to? Or?
Well, the 8 phases, with the new moon, and then you have
Oh,
the crescent moon, and then the first quarter, and then the
okay. Yeah, yeah.
but I do
Mm.
have on the cards, I show how they correlate to the
Oh,
Celtic
okay. Yeah,
seasons too, because it's the power of
yeah,
the eight. And in Chinese
yeah,
medicine, my Qigong teacher taught me about, they really bring in the eight. The power of the eight is when you're moving from fire to metal in the five elements, and or fire to earth to metal, depending on which way you use it. And that sort of tipping point halfway of where the season truly shifts and it moves into the next phase or the next element.
yeah,
So it's very
yeah,
much part of Chinese medicine.
yeah,
The blend, it is, like I said, it's basically teaching the yin yang cycle, and how
yeah,
none of them are absolute. They're a continuation of a whole. And so there's that
yeah,
movement that happens where you shift from one to the next, but it's not like we want everything to be finite in this culture and our world. And that's where we're getting lost, I think.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting that because I'm sorry, I'm only distracted by the fact that I have to make sure my phone because otherwise, if I don't make sure my phone is plugged in, it goes dead. There, I've done it. But yeah, it's funny because just before I came here, I always think I'm going to take what should I take to read? And one of my favorite three books is The Chinese Symbolism of Numbers. And it goes into that. And it's really profound. Well, I'm interested in number symbolism generally, but that's a tiny bit more new to me, the Chinese side of it in terms of the number symbolism. But I know from uh, all the numbers are important, of course, in different ways, in Chinese medicine. I mean, but Qi Gong, you've got the eight brocades, they're all symbolic in that way, but it gives you power that, and the eight is to do with that, like in the tarot, strength, the woman
Mm.
taming the lion. And it's that feminine power energy, which also relates to Pluto. And, I strongly correlate that with eight as well. So, but yeah, I think that it's if you look at the even the number eight, it's constant movement. That's the thing. It is that constant movement of the cycle of the eight of those seasons. And what you said about just before we started, I got ready unusually early, so I was like hanging around when are people going to show up, etc. And I looked up and there was the moon, even though it was morning, it's just between the trees. And I can see it at the moment. It's just half moon. But anyway, thank you. Uh, Deborah, tell us what's your feelings and knowledge about whatever you want to share about the moon.
So I'm moon in Cancer.
Yeah,
Um, two things. What Jenny said and what Sue said, which I really agree with, really resonate with, is the moon always seems to catch you kind of by surprise. It does, because it has that element of clouded in something. And when I think of the moon, I think of remembering and coming back to wholeness or remembering wholeness, but at the same time walking through the confusion, because there's a lot of confusion with the moon. It hides and it plays a little bit. So I think for me, I really resonate with the rebirth aspect of it, because for me on my journey and going through the cycles of like really extreme trauma, etc., and a lot of confusion and a lot of trying to just decide. I'm not going to say the word right. Disidentify, is that a word? Opposite of identify. I'm trying to think of the word. Oh my God, I'm having a brain block. Just not dissolve the ego, but disidentify with all the things attached to the ego that brought me so much pain and kind of suffering, like attaching to all the thoughts of my past and all the all those things.
Yeah.
And so, and I really feel the moon is that for me. It's that real dying to yourself and rebirthing. Just die into all the kind of concepts. Repeat, not dissolving and not being in the world, because everything still exists, but just not getting caught up in everything as much. The things that cause me pain, the things that I attach to all of those things and thoughts. And that's how I think about the moon.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know what? Because when I think of it, well, first of all, I love that term disidentify. I like that. Because you know what? One of my favorite songs in that way by Holy River, they're called. They're like a herbal folk group from I think they're like in Virginia or somewhere, or they're near the Appalachia. I follow them on Facebook. Yeah, I think they're called Holy River. Yeah. And there's one song called No /No, KNOW. It's my favorite song by them. No, and it's quite hypnotic, but it's about going into nature to get rid of all these that you've taken on from society unconsciously. Getting things that you didn't even know that you had been programmed to think or feel. And I thought it was a powerful song in that way. And I thought the person's like really being real and owning that we've all got that element of what we need to clear that have been programmed, not to follow our true instinctive lunar self of feeling, And part of that is interesting because if you think of the 7 stages of alchemy, there's 3 lunar stages and 3 solar stages, but the stage that's dominated or governed by the moon in spiritual alchemy, leading to the creation of the quintessence, which is that's the alchemical marriage of the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon that's what this alchemy in many different traditions, or from the Eastern, it's like uniting your yin and yang, in that sense. But in the Western alchemy, it's governed by the process of albedo, and albedo is a whitening, and it's the cleansing and purifying of the soul. That's actually that part of this alchemical stage that leading to inner union. So it's interesting. You said it's washing away things that get embedded in the. And the moon is also, like people mention the body, and I think so. It's also our psychic body where we hold trauma. And I think that's one of the powers that we'll be looking at, especially with the oils today, like neroli, very good for that. You get a lot of, if you use it in massage, often the patient has a release. Rose, of course, as well, is more of like an inner, they get in touch with the inner, or yeah. So, and lavender, I think, can, that's more calming in many ways, of course, and we'll be starting with that, but uplifting too. But anyway, Christine, thank you so much, Deborah. Would you tell us about what your feelings of the moon are?
I think, I think I follow the cycles of the moon because I associate it with energy. So energy levels, and I love the beauty of the moon. And so I'm always looking up in the sky to see, what it looks like, what it's doing. Is it the new moon? Is it full moon? But I find that I'm very aware of different energies in a day. If I'm at work, and because I work with lots of people and I see people all day, and some days you just notice everybody's behaving a bit strange, or there's a lot of volatility, or there's a lot of upset. And I think I've noticed that there's certain phases of the moon where people are behaving differently. And I think I've learned that there is this cycle because it renews, doesn't it? And it renews and it rebuilds, it renews again. And with all the cycles, there's different energy levels and there's different energies around. And so you just notice people and yourself, like when you're more tired or you've got lots of energy. And it seems to be associated with the different phases, but I definitely, I love the beauty of it. And I am just aware of all the energies, and I sort of feel like you've just got to go with the flow. So if you have a tired day, you sort of know that it's going to be better. And it's just a phase, as you say. And I love that. I love that. And I'm just sort of aware these days of what's going on with the cycles of the moon. I love it.
Mm. I think I've seen research that shows, like, when the moon is full, there's more like arrests and incidents and everything. Yeah, but yeah, it must be fascinating to see that, like, the mood among a social group like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
as your work entails. Thanks.
A lot of
Thanks,
people say,
Christine.
when it's been a really strange day at work, a lot of people will say, "Oh, it must be a full moon."
Yeah.
They say stuff like that, but there is something in that, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
Natalie, tell us what's the moon for you? I know you're still new to astrology, but what's the moon for you?
Um,
In a few words.
Moon Fatmi, safety.
Oh, yeah.
A dream I review in several years. There's a very beautiful moon on the sky. It's bright. The weather is not so hot, not so cold, is warm. And the universe of my dream is a bit gray but shining. And when I saw this dream, I feel that there's my motherland, and I'm safe here. And this dream gives me power to walk through my journey. And it's moon is always gives me brave to continue my journey.
Oh, that's great. Thanks,
It's
Nancy.
like my
Yeah.
all thing.
I think, yeah, it is that it was beautiful. Definitely, Jenny. Yeah. And, yeah, I think I'll bring up the slide first. Bob, you'd be talking about the soul, and I think the soul aspect is very much our journey through life, that horizontal plane of exploration, growth, expansion, and merging. I think, as I've said before, whereas the spirit is more that vertical aspect of us. Yeah, Robert Bly used to talk in those terms too, and it made a lot of sense. But definitely journey.
I
Now,
I feel like
yeah,
too, um,
yeah.
one of my teachers taught me how to like sit back into my spine. Because I think we're so forward facing, which is really solar all the time, but to sit back
Oh,
into your
yes.
spine is to sit back into your nervous system and
Yeah,
into your lunar body. And then I think about the
yeah,
High Priestess card in tarot, right? Because
right. Yeah,
everything is behind her and there's the mystery and all the bigness of the mystery. And I don't know. So I just
yeah,
like, I have to remember when I'm getting to maybe solar to sit back into the lunar by just like basically shifting my orientation and awareness out of the screen and back into my own back body and feel
yeah,
that energy run.
yeah,
Something you said just reminded me of that I wanted to just
yeah,
because it felt appropriate for
yeah.
some.
It's funny, what I do. I often will. I think when we meet up as well. The other thing I think that's quite solar is that we're using more our sense of vision. Whereas the lunar senses, especially our smell. So that's what I'll do if there's a long session and you're really using your eyes and we're connecting, although it's a powerful connection I think we have on that level of, connecting with your tribe of people who share the same crossover of passion, shared passions. I think things like that, like, yeah, I think being in touch with your body, like you say, with your spine, with your breath, I think that all helps, doesn't it? Yeah.
Mhm. And the mystery, because the moon is the mystery. It's behind it. You can't see it. It's only felt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I suppose it's those realizations and everything that comes and goes, it comes and goes, doesn't it? So the truth is always like that. You can't quite always hold on to it. The sun thinks, I've got it, and if you get too sun dominated, then you could be a bit like literally dogmatic. So it's bringing that together with your intuition, isn't it? Really, I guess. But yeah, thank you. Um, now I'll just get those my slides there. Sorry, just on the moon that you have. I think one. I'm just going to move that slightly. One important thing for me, I like to always mention the glyph first. And I think that's because, well, even when I talk about, it's kind of to do with the kind of basic energetics of the meaning of the phenomenon, in this case, the moon, the symbolism of it, really. A bit, if you think there's the yantra, I think it's a kind of very pure symbol, isn't it? A glyph or a sign, an image. But I think the important thing as well is that it's also a core part of the other signs, sorry, the other planets rather, that have that lunar element to their glyph. right? As opposed to the solar, which of course is the circle, with, of course, the sun, the sun's sign, the sun glyph itself has the kind of dot or like bindu or essence of the universe in the middle, like the divine essence is implied there, as well as the whole list, or as well as the circular integrating function of the sun. Whereas the moon, as Sue mentioned, our receptivity, and that's part of that is its cup-like nature. You know, it can hold water if you think of it like a holy grail. You know, and in that sense, I don't like to, on the level of the sun and moon, I don't like to get too gender-based because I don't think the main polarity for me, of course, about the sun and moon, this is nothing unusual, but just to emphasize it, is the polarity between the spirit and the soul. The sun being, again, symbolic of the spirit, wants to realize itself. You know, the moon wants to, in fact, in that sense, kind of, it's interesting because I think that we lose ourselves, but we by the process of finding what we can lose ourselves into, everything that's creative and sensual, cooking, eating, walking, smelling, sleeping, the life of the body and the life the life of the moon, really, and all those things, and following the rhythms and that self-nurturing that goes with it. I think, you know, that in one way it's an escape from ourselves, but it's also an enrichment and an expansion of ourselves, like a fruit, you know, that's growing in that way. So, and indeed, that's the yin nature of the moon, I think. So, yeah. Whereas, yeah, whereas the sun, you know, is that part of us that I suppose you know, is thinking, I've got to do this, you know, because that's what is, in a way, I think I associate the sun more again with what's inspiring me to do, not just, you know, activity for its own sake, right? But feeling this life is precious. I need to achieve my best here, you know. And that, you know, so not that the moon doesn't have, but the moon is where we get is where we get the enjoyment of the fruits of that, I think, of what the sun impels us and inspires us, draws us to do, gives us the direction to do, like rosemary, really, you know. But when it comes to celebration, that's like we reach for jasmine, or, you know, the florals are also the fragrances of celebration. Yeah, and in a way, I think that the fragrance energies and these plants, the flowers themselves, can teach us as well about the nature of the moon, I think. And because just smelling them and evokes those very aspects of our consciousness, our feelings, you know, as we know, our memory, which of course is for which the limbic system and the amygdala processing experience and memory, and in many similarly following the same neuro pathways as fragrance perception. And of course, that's why we know and understand, as very well described by the books of Rachel Hertz, the Dr. Hertz, who I've heard lecture, and she's written books about this intersection between memory and fragrance. And even I've seen recent research as well, how they're savored in the same parts, even of the frontal cortex of the brain as well. So it is an ongoing study of research. And then there is that, I think, reflection, sensitivity, and yes, you think of the High Priestess in the tarot, the second card, representing that, and our yin qualities of receptivity, and you can even, I've written before, think of oil specifically to encourage that. For instance, especially rose and geranium. But I don't want to make it look like it's only the floral. All the oils are going to work on the moon in some way, but some more than others. Okay. For example, if you want to think about instinctual responses, well, clary sage, for example, and Culpeper dedicated that, or to the moon. He considered clary sage governed by the moon. And I do find, and that's, I think, part again, in this instance, part of it's got that kind of slightly musky, sweet, herbaceous, bittersweet, herbaceous fragrance energy, quite complex, and slightly in a way, well, it is considered euphoric. And I think it's euphoric because what it does is it really releases tension in the lunar body. I know that those aromatics and botanicals, which have an overall effect in terms of Chinese medicine, to relax and smooth, not to sedate you, right? But enough to release the tension in that psychic energy body I was talking about, which is totally your lunar body. That's the level of your moon, and it has a big effect on your mood. It's only one letter difference there between moon and mood, but a lot of it is there in the body. And I do think some of those, the really top systemic antispasmodics, like clary sage is a prime example. They are so good to release release the stuck or stagnant chi throughout the body. And I think that you can think of them in that way, by doing that, even enhancing our instinctual nature, our animal soul nature, if you like. And also, for example, marjoram works in that way. Frankincense works in that way. And actually, also, interestingly, lavender does too, we'll see. But lavender, of course, has the advantage of being sweet, herbaceous, and rich in esters, in its chemical makeup, which makes it really good, again, for releasing that tension in the musculature in our lunar body. But it's also, of course, floral. And I think that's its rare crossover. So it reflected even in the fact that you've got linalool acetate and linalool. Those compounds frequently occur together. But again, it's got both those elements to it that it's not surprising that it's become an over-the-counter natural medicine, especially in Europe. The essential oil in the gel caps I've been talking about for anxiety, a much safer alternative to the conventional antidepressants. Although, interestingly, it works in a roughly similar way, as we'll see, by enhancing serotonin availability in the brain, And of course, serotonin is a neurochemical that governs your, interestingly, mood and memory, right? So, even serotonin sounds quite lunar, doesn't it? But that's the drugs work on the serotonin, but in a much, more overt way by blocking the serotonin, the SERT transporter, whereas lavender is able to do it without the same side effects. And it is a serotonergic action, though. Yeah, it does involve that neurochemical. And just like the evidence has shown, interestingly, that clary sage works especially in a dopaminergic way on your dopamine, interestingly, as well. And I think that's part of its euphoric quality, making it very uplifting as well. But otherwise, let's think of, it's our ability. I think this comes back to just now, being able to go with the flow and be adaptable like that. No, that's the energy and virtue of the number 8, if you like, as well. The even numbers are all more yin or like feminine numbers, and eight is being double 4. It has it's considered to be also being able to master nature as well in that way, and so the craftsmanship comes in with the moon as well, I think. So and not getting stuck in, of course, we all fall back on habitual behavior, and to some extent I think is part of our security setup in a way. And it is a security, is like Nasli was talking about as well. It's where we go for our sources of security, right from what do they call it when the kind of when you have some a kind of something to eat that's comfort food, that's it. And but it's all part of self nurturing. And so you can look the moon and the position of the moon and its challenges according to any aspects that are making a square or position. That's obviously going to reflect issues around many of these topics, obviously. So that's what we'll be looking for. We need to look for in the chart. Yeah. And I do find I kind of tread the ground carefully, but it's often quite useful and interesting to reflect on how much the moon in a given person's chart reflects more the influence of their mother as opposed to the son, the father. And although I don't think that it's always the case, and it could even switch around, it is nevertheless often, I think, quite really uncannily accurate in many ways. But I think the important thing, but it has to be said, in something that Liz Green emphasized, it's about your own perception. Because, for example, you could have a brother or sister, you could have the same parents, and you may think they were the kindest parents in the world. And these stories. A sibling might think they were terrible parents. I mean, this is a gross exaggeration, but that will be reflected in their charts. So it's not, so which is the right one? I'm not putting that forward as an example in that sense, but more as an example of it's about the perception, and their effect on you. And that can be similar among siblings, of course, but it can also be, as I'm sure, a radically different kind of response to it, to parental influences, whatever. Anyway, okay. So there we go. Those are those key considerations. Is that the next one? Yeah. So in terms of health, the body as a whole, actually, I mean, in terms of medical astrology, the moon is critical, looking at the position of the moon and, in general terms. Yeah. But specifically, sorry, I'm just going to make a go here. But specifically, ruling cancer, okay? Sorry, through cancer, because cancer rules the stomach. And the stomach is, of course, important, you can relate it to the moon is our first through our body, our sustenance and our nourishment and our ability to nourish. Excuse me. Yeah, and I think there's an element. Well, the interesting thing is the stomach is a container, but it's also a transformer. So I think there's a containing aspect to the moon, like an alembic as well. And I think that's part of the image, and that's part of the stomach's action. But Cancer is a cardinal cardinal. So I think that reflects Cancer's ability to transform in that way, Yeah, and very well. It's considered a yang organ in Chinese medicine, but the most important of the yang so-called hollow workshop organs. And of course, yeah. So anyway, the moon too, and this is where you can really relate it to the yin in TCM. Okay, the cool, moist aspect of the body. Really, all the yin, really, as opposed to the yang of the body. The yin is really everything that makes up our physical being and nature. The tissues, the bones, the blood, the lymph, and the yang essentially is functional, in that way. All the movement, peristalsis, heartbeat, nerve conductivity, everything that you can't see or that's invisible. But that's on a fundamental level, because otherwise yin yang, it's used in a different way it's used in a diagnostic way, or it's used in a different way to describe the action of a herb or an oil. Okay, but we are going to be doing rose, okay, and as an aromatic, and even as a herb, it's really a formidable aromatic herb and essential oil for the yin, in that sense. For that, encouraging in the body that cool, moist energy, which is all about relating to the body fluids. And at the right, of course, I mean, essential oils by nature are still, as opposed to the hydrosol, relatively more yang. They are yang by nature. Okay, that's the thing about essential oils, because they're very volatile. I mean, that's essential property of what we call yang as well. The fact that they're aromatic and volatile, as opposed to the hydrosol, which is the other byproduct of distillation. So, but rose among them and the florals in particular, have qualities that you could describe as the most yin, as long as, for example, you use, of course, them at the right concentration in whatever application to the body you're doing. But there's even research of smelling rose otto can help retain moisture on the skin. And that is a definite sign that it supports and strengthens the yin. And that's important because, for example, menopause, as we recently did on the diploma course, looking that perimenopausal symptoms are exactly one of the main causes in TCM terms is a deficiency of yin. And that's often just temporary because it's part of the natural decline of the underlying genetic essence. But still, we want to be using botanicals that help to nourish the yin, and the floral in particular, as we've seen. And of course, that's in that sense rose as well in different traditions of Persian medicine, well known to encourage fertility, regulate the menstrual cycle, and generally beneficial to the female reproductive system too. Yeah. So the moon also can be relating to the hypothalamus and the limbic system. And then, you know, in that sense, the autonomic, and out of the different kinds of memory, if you look at in scientific terms, the different types of memory, like transitional memory, and also, I'm trying to remember the exact term, but it's the kind of memory. I think is it autonomic memory, something similar. I'm not sure that's the right term, but it's the kind of the lunar memory as well is deeply embodied. It's the kind of a memory that you rely on, like when you're driving a car, even because you don't think, okay, oh, there's a car up there, so I better press on the brake a bit now. Right. Oh no, it's moving ahead. So now I can press on the acceleration. Now I've got to turn the wheel that way. In other words, you do all that instinctively without thinking, you see. So that's a kind of memory, out of the different kinds of memory. That kind of memory is, and I forget the exact term, I'm sorry. But it's the one that is, you don't have to think about it. It's unconscious, you know. It's like being able to play, you know, when you really get good at an instrument, it goes to that kind of level. Yeah, so that's part of the limbic's memory as well. It's that deep, you know. Yeah, so the sun indicates overall vigor, the moon it reflects the influence of the psyche and your emotions as well. Think that's true. And I think that's why these oils like lavender is good for emotional exhaustion. You think, oh, well, it's relaxing. But that's because if there's stress and worry or anxiety, that can obviously affect your vitality and feeling of energy, you know. And research, it's interesting because it's not typical research to find anything that actually gives you energy, and including mental energy. But there is some around more and more around essential oils like sage, like Spanish sage. It's been shown to be beneficial for like mental fatigue, you know. So we've got tools in our armory here to help, and both to relax the moon, but also improve the consciousness function of the sun as well, cognition, Anyway, yeah, the moon, how the body adjusts to life's challenges. And I think that's where patterns of reaction established in childhood, and also, once again, storing in our energy body and musculature, and that's why I think Jenny said body work and massage can really, combined with essential oils, really helps on that, to have direct access really to that level of our being, really, the lunar level. I find massage is so good in that way as well, having come from that myself, like through shiatsu and working on the points of the energy body. I think that's great, of course. So looking at more like in terms of doctrine of signatures, yeah, Ola on Friday in her talk, interestingly, from talking about the use of in traditional African medicine as well. And even we were talking about tamarind, which literally does look like intestines, look at the tamarind beans, it's like, oh my God, it's like, so the doctrine of signatures of course, is, that going back several centuries, really. Well, really, I suppose its roots even are there's references in that way or similarities in ancient Greek medicine, even though I'm not sure that term, doctrine of signatures, I think it's more of a medieval or Renaissance term. But anyway, it's this association between, the look of the plant and it's resembling in some way the planet, obviously. Yeah. And then, well, of course, even with the advent of scientific classification of plants with Linnaeus in the 18th century, that stage, it was still very much classifying plants and grouping them according to how their morphology and shape and how they looked, So that, in a way, that kind of was also, at the very beginning of how science classified plants. They not according to the doctrine of signatures, if you like, but more according to aspects of their appearance, like the Lamiaceae, all having the square stems and so forth. But of course, what's evolved now, interestingly, is grouping more and more plants together and reclassifying them according to different ways of analyzing the genetic similarity, in terms of. I'm just going to close this door, sorry, because there's a few cars going by. Looking at their DNA and comparing, it's very complex. I've seen some of the papers. I could read the ones with chemistry, but when it's all that genetics and DNA diagrams, it's incredibly complex. But that's what it is now. Although it's again interesting because I do think, again, that's quite lunar. That's still quite lunar, the DNA, because that's our fertility, isn't it? Yeah, but otherwise, it's the banana, the gourd, the round fruits, and the vegetables. And indeed, actually, well, now we know how important these fruits and vegetables are, especially for the gut and the microbiome. Banana, especially unripe banana, has even a probiotic influence, and mango. I think Ola was talking about mango. Pumpkin as well is famous in Chinese and Kampo Japanese macrobiotics, all especially for the stomach. And that's in terms of the earth element aspect of TCM. The spleen, the stomach, yeah, very much so. Famous, the most famous of all in that way, considered therapeutically, is the Hokkaido pumpkin, But you can see you've got incredible flavonoids there and carotenoids, so wonderful for the liver too. And then also, interestingly, those that can be on the narcotic, in other words, very relaxing nature, like opium poppy, or intensely sweet, like orris root. Like we used to have orris root in this apothecary. I worked in London in the 80s, Neal's Yard, and you could add it to mixtures of herbs for potpourri because it was like really sweet, and made one of the sweetest things you could smell from a natural source. Water lily and water plants and plants with a high water content that are very good for your yin, especially when it's hot and dry in summer. Cabbage, of course, all the crucifer family, cruciferissa. Dear, I'm not going to try and say it. But they are all those vegetables like kale and broccoli that are incredibly antioxidant, of course. Yeah. And then seaweeds. And really, everybody should eat more. We don't eat enough. They're so rich in minerals, So try and have, you're not far from sources, are you, Debs? Because I know that coast as well is a great. Autumn collects seaweed along the Pacific coast, going around Salt Point, which is a bit south of you. But have you ever done that?
Yeah, no, am I on? Yeah, on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah.
I was just trying to read up about it actually the other day, like, just to make sure where you can eat it or what,
Yeah,
because
if
I
you wash it well and everything.
week before, so I don't want to
Yeah,
get contaminated.
you don't want to what?
I don't want it to be contaminated or then.
No, that's right. Well, the same is true as fish and everything, isn't it? From what we get out of the sea. I know what you're saying, definitely. Yeah, yeah. Um, I don't think though, I think that coast is it's a long way from industry and everything. So it seemed when I've been there, pretty natural as far as I know. But
Away from
anyway,
everything.
sorry.
It's a long way
Oh,
from everything.
yeah, the further north you go too, I know. Okay. Oh, and also wintergreen. I think willow and wintergreen too, for things that are pain relieving, and they both have a natural source of methyl salicylate as well. Yeah, which interestingly came up with one of the oils I was teaching in Japan, also has well, not similar actually, is also rich in, yeah, methyl salicylate as well. Noyokabushi, it's called. But anyway, okay. Cold pepper, as I said, particularly mentioned. Well, clary sage, I've indicated those reasons. What and rose will be doing, and pumpkin. Well, that's another. Well, it has nothing to do with the Japanese view, but it's interesting, isn't it? But of course, it's round. But I think he intuitively knew that it's very beneficial, especially in the form of soup, etc. And from this other book, I include Bayer. I've had a book I've had a long time, but definitely, as you can see, the first three make complete sense in the sense focus on the stomach, and then jasmine being, of a sweet floral nature. Um, well, I'll tell you what, that we'll hop over now to look at lavender, but let's have a 10-minute break and a pee break, shall we? And come back at 25 past the hour, could we? Okay, thanks. All righty. How are things, Sue? How are things with you?
They're good, busy. I've been doing a lot of landscaping projects, which I built a brick pathway this
Oh,
weekend.
cool.
It's very exhausting, but
Yeah,
I'm getting things done in my
yeah,
Capricorn way.
yeah. Does it
My
have like
daughter,
is it like a earth foundation, or are you putting like a foundation of some kind for it?
it was a pathway that I built, I don't know, years and years ago that just got all wobbly and the
Oh,
bricks kind of
okay.
came apart and things were growing between them. So I kind
Yeah,
of took them all
renewing.
apart and redid it. And oh my God, it was a puzzle and it was incredibly exhausting. But I reached a point
Oh,
halfway through
I
where the
just saw
path.
that you, I'm sorry, I just saw you worked at Neil's Yard. I'm sorry, I glanced
No,
at.
you said you worked at Neil's Yard.
Oh, but here it says that it says I used to work at Neil's Yard in the
Oh, I
80s.
used to shop at Neil's Yard, is
Oh,
what I
shop.
meant
I'm sorry.
to say. We
Okay,
probably met in several places many years ago.
I bet. I'm
That's so
sorry, but
funny.
what were you saying again?
My daughter, who's Capricorn rising, happened to come home when I was halfway through this project, and I just couldn't figure out the puzzle because two parts of the path didn't really meet up. And she came with her very logical, and she and I got the whole thing done together, which I said, oh, I'm so glad you came home. I would have just cried every day because I just couldn't figure out how to get it all
Yeah.
done. So it was quite good.
Is she Capricorn?
She's Capricorn rising, so
Oh, okay.
my
Yeah.
Mars and her ascendant conjunct. So we just got to banging away on those bricks and got it all done in a couple of hours.
Wow, that's
I've been
amazing.
working on it for a week, and I
Oh,
said, you
you
got to
needed
help me
it.
with this. I know you're the right person for the job. And she could
Wow.
see the pattern, and she got me back on track, and we just pounded them all back in, and it got done.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing.
Wow. That's cool. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking just to, before we start, just to share some of my photos of the moon because I realized that
Nice.
that was one I took. That one is called Moon Afternoon, so I think it was obviously the afternoon. But it's just a this is
That's a fabulous photo.
this is well, I've got a lens that can goes up to 600 millimeters, which means that it can do a pretty good job, look of getting
Wow.
animals or whatever. But let's see, what else have I got? Oh yeah, could you see that or not? No. Did you?
Yeah.
No. Oh well, here's another one. Now, do you see that one with the mist on the ground?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's in I took that. That was at night. That's the moon. That's not the sun. That's at night.
Wow.
Yeah, what time of day was it? I think no, it was just that I was there. It's in the middle of Yosemite National Park, in the Yosemite Valley.
Incredible.
Right near where there's the Yosemite Lodge, I think, and there's this very big field. But I was just amazed. It was very lunar in that way. It was really mystical. But that's actually the full moon there, and it all lit up the mist. Yeah, so that was cool.
That's a superb shot. Incredible shot.
There's another one that I took. Oh, just a minute. Let me get rid of that. Uh, oh, can
Poppies.
you see that? Oh, yeah. So that was just a poppy field where I was living in Norfolk in England, but with the full moon, under the full moon. So
Wow.
again, yeah, in the evening, I think it was more like, kind of the sun had already set, but it wasn't completely dark, so the sky was still a bit blue. But anyway, I love that the way the lunar light was coming in and lighting up the flowers.
Incredible.
What else have I? Oh, okay. Well, this is another one that, oh dear, sorry. Um, let me just, uh, oh, can you see that one?
Yeah.
Okay. That one that one I took, that's from my deck in Groveland, where you can, there's a lot of trees around, so often I get a bit of the tree in the picture, there. But I wanted to show you though, oh dear. Oh, I closed them. I shouldn't have closed them. Moon, here's a interesting one. That it was also from Yosemite National Park.
Oh my God.
Now,
Uh,
what that is, that's a moonbow, not a rainbow, because the light is coming from the moon. It's at night.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
you have to have your camera on a tripod. You can't hold it. You actually have to have something to have the camera stable. And a lot of people show up to see this. It's one of those things that only happens when the light's coming in or the moon at a certain angle in May. You go, and I think that's Upper Yosemite Falls. So yeah, so that's why it's called a moonbow. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, it's magical. Yeah.
That's an amazing shot.
I have to go there next May.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that's enough of my showing off there.
That's
But
some really phenomenal photography.
oh well, no, thanks. I think, for me it's like I love nature, of course, and landscape and so forth. So, and then, of course with teaching, and from flowers, of course, to trees as well. And I think a lot of the photos you'll see that I've collected for the course. Well, we already look, I think, have we done trees? But anyway, to see the plant growing in its landscape as well as close-ups, in its habitat is always nice. So we're going to look at now, yeah. Um, okay, yeah. So, these are just key words. I mean, um, they, I mean, there's different, of course, dimensions to each of them. But maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of reference those keywords at the beginning of each one. Yeah, so that's again, there you've got in the notes. I think some keywords, of course, the moon. And what I didn't finish saying, by the way, the importance. So there's the moon, and of course, the moon also comes in as in the glyphs of Saturn and Jupiter as well, which I think is also the more social aspect of the lunar experience, in terms of society, for example. Yeah. Well, I won't go into that now, but I think that's something to be aware of. And of course, at the same time, those planets that actually integrate both, which is Mercury, has the lunar crescent on over the circle of spirit, dominating, which is good, the cross of matter, like Venus does. That's where spirit dominant, and that's harmon, that's harmonious, and that's why I've got that as a key word for Venus, for example, and lavender is very, if there's one that's if it's like the rescue remedy, it balances the Shen in that way. So when you need harmony in that, even in acute situation, lavender works in different ways, and to help to restore that, at the right kind of application for the person, and only if they like it, not if it gives them a bad memory. But But just to say, and I think this is interesting, and I think it's quite topical because, in the sense that if you think about ethics, right? Ethics, ethics, ethics is it is a logical system, but it's still guided by what you might call a dedication to goodness, conscience. And I think that's where you have the lunar crescent crowning the circle of spirit, and that makes up our ability of the mind and judgment in that way, should be guided by, a sense of compassion and so forth. And I think for me, that's represented by the lunar crescent there, crowning the circle of the spirit, which in turn is dominating matter, which is also the skill thing as well, like with Virgo, doing something with your hands as well. So that's another lunar dimension, I think, to Mercury as well. In fact, something critical to skill, right, is that brain or eye, hand order coordination. Again, very deep and limbic in our makeup. Neurologically speaking, yeah, as well. And the other, of course, there's a couple of the outer planets integrate the lunar and solar principles, again, which is interesting, really, if you think, because if Pluto is a vehicle that allows us to, or gives us and sustains us through transformations and changes, and it has that long arc within our lives that draws power from our unconscious towards our growth. And part of that is this integration I said before of sun and moon. Then I think it's interesting that it has both of those glyphs in it, the sun and the moon, as well as the cross of matter. And Uranus does as well, but interestingly, it's got two lunar glyphs. And it is, I think Uranus, you can think almost as our radar. It's everything that we pick up, and our sensitivity, but almost our kind of, when I say psychic, but going beyond, going beyond the limits of what Mercury, defines as more like the rational, and going beyond that even, and tapping into the universal mind,
Like an
Okay,
antenna.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Like an antenna.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. And like an antenna. So this is just, and again, I don't really mean to, this is where I always like to think that, well, sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water, but
So,
this is,
quite,
yeah,
just a thought, sorry. Uranus
yeah,
can be like the universal moon, the collective unconscious, right?
yeah, I think
In a
that's a
way.
good, yeah. Which one, sorry? Planet?
Uranus.
I think that's really an interesting, yeah, I think that's a deep, and I think there's still a lot more to understand and explore about Uranus in that way, but thank you. I think that
Oh,
makes
that just when you
trans,
said it was the consciousness, but then if you think of
yeah,
your with Mercury, but then if Uranus is the higher octave of that or the
yeah,
transpersonal aspect of it, then being the collect not just the consciousness, but the collective unconsciousness.
totally, yeah. And that's, I think, part of what I mentioned there is the transpersonal soul as well. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, no, thank you. That's great. Um, Yeah, and I think, well, maybe that's why, of course, I'm relating that energy of Uranus in particular to really, if anything, just to mention, the reason I put like the camphoraceous and minty, which partly, when rosemary is, or a Spanish sage, well, sage is more camphoraceous, really. For example, Spanish sage, although, rosemary has some camphoraceous in it, because I mean, it's rich in 1,8-cineol. But this defines really those aromatics that are the most stimulating to the brain of all of them, really. And that includes, well, there are also a couple that we did last time, even like hyssop. Hyssop is it's ketone rich, so it's very drawn to nervous tissue and so forth, It's got pinacampone and so forth. So those are some of them. And then minty and peppermint, if you think, is also got ketone rich. It's rich in menthone. So and what's interesting, in ancient Greece, the oracle, which was the diviner, the female shamanic priestess in ancient Greece, who was the oracle, used specifically these kind of aromatics to chew on and to burn to get visions. So these were the visionary herbs like laurel chewed on and peppermint and the mints and so forth. And plus, we'll see, they even made with mint what was called the Demeter's Kykeon, which was a kind of drink that you took also to help raise your consciousness, So you do find that, especially, that's an example. But of course, today, doing the moon, we're right over here, the opposite, the most relaxing, really, in that sense. And I've a little bit distinguished them because there's different ways. It's not the only way, but the herbaceous fragrance family was very big, too big to keep in one, because you've got one dimension of this fragrance energy, which is more sweet herbaceous, and then the pungent herbaceous is more like rosemary. They have similarities. They're all good at moving the chi, but of course the pungent ones are much more tonic and so forth, and solar in nature. These that have a lot of Venusian energy, the sweet green ones, like Melissa and everything. But over here, coming to really, you can see that in each quarter, we've got the elements, air up here, polarized with earth, you could connect most associated with the rooty fragrance energy. It's interesting. I think here I put camphoraceous between air and fire because it's got the fiery pungency of stimulate dynamism to it. Fire warming and having a strongly what you call hedonic effect as well. But hedonic is any fragrance or taste that's pleasure giving, as in hedonism, which is very much including those that are sultry, are very typically hedonic, like jasmine and some of those more sultry. So that's what I was coming to. I put the floral really divided into the lighter, more lunar, nurturing in a way, as in rose, but then the jasmine type florals that actually, interestingly, even have, what's that compound again that Mandy Aftel refers to that's in jasmine that's kind of erogenous, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, the name of the compound, but it's native to our erogenous zone, in our biological makeup. So it appears in small amount, and hopefully the name will come back to me of that compound. Jasmine, is it? It might be jasmine. That's a ketone, but that we have that we produce that compound, and even even it's kind of part of a fecal matter, even, would you believe it? But the understanding though is that it's small amount in the jasmine oil, but it all contributes to taking consciousness kind of to, in that kind of direction, like that erotic direction, actually, So that's the kind of more sultry. So it's interesting, it crosses over, especially towards more like the Venus side of us, which is that, again, very sensual nature of us, So anyhow, whereas I think the purely more lunar is more the maternal nature of the floral, if you like, rather than the Venusian so much, you know. So and in that way, yeah, nurturing, of course, like rose, etc. Those are the ones. Osmanthus is like that as well. If you smelt it, it's more like a stringent, clear, pure light. Like it's rice flour. And lotus even, lotus is kind of that medicinal fragrance as well, you know, so it's very serene and grounding, you know, it's not like losing yourself, which is what in the sultry are. These are ones that would be described by, for instance, in the Psychology of Perfumery, the classic by Jelenic and edited by his son, Paul Jelenic, I think was the father who wrote it, The Psychology of Perfumery, which a little bit influences some of my way I've done things in here, even, you know, I won't go into it because it's a bit technical, but at this moment at least, you know, but these are these that he would actually describe these sultry as being also like narcotic even. Now, not narcotic in a pharmacological way, because he's just talking about narcotic as a perfumery term, you know, where you feel kind of, again, that lunar quality of losing yourself. But I think, do you know, it's interesting. That can be really healing. A lot of people need that, don't they? They're so out of touch with their sensuality, with their body, they can't relax. And that's why these are almost also among the most relaxing, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, and some of the most uplifting and antidepressant. I think in some ways, the lunar ones here, I've associated, well, called straightforward floral. I know patchouli's not floral, but the rest are. But here, these are also floral, but they're more lunar in that way. And I think probably generally, well, a little bit, but then they're still good for certain kinds of depression. But they are a little. The emphasis I would say is that these excel more for anxiety, especially lavender and rose. Of course, there's tons of research. I mean, lavender, that's indisputable. Neroli is a bit of both. Neroli is interesting. You could actually put it, Neroli is the most balanced, I think, between being both like citrusy, floral. Maybe that has the edge, but also having that sultry quality as well. Maybe the lunar has a little bit the edge, but it's great for anxiety and depression, you know. But osmanthus as well has that kind of a clear astringency that is good for anxiety, you know, because it's understood in TCM. It's like if you've got a fracturing of the shen, you want to have, but they give herbs as well that have a sweet astringency to them that has a binding effect on consciousness in a way. Whereas the sultry especially are great for, you know, different kinds of depression. You know, they have that euphoric quality to them, especially obviously jasmine, ylang ylang. Yeah, which is especially about, you know, releasing tension, maybe sexual tension, or but really any I think chronic depression where you want something that is going to be literally a mood, you know, have a hedonic impact that will shift the mood. I mean, there's nothing stronger than aromatics for that. And so, you know, they can, of course, but they're also in, you know, of course, ylang ylang, not many people, you have to be careful, you know, express a dislike because in many ways it's not really natural to smell a pure oil in that way, so concentrated in the form of an essential oil. I always liken it to, it's like you don't, if you put your hi-fi on to listen to music, you don't put your ear right to the speaker and to hear it. It's too strong. And in a way, when we smell a pure essential oil, it's such a concentration. It's almost like putting our ear right against the hi-fi speaker, you know. So it's not surprising a lot of people like are put off by ylang ylang. But so it's all about, that's about the art of blending. I think that's when the art of blending comes in. And I know when I've worked with ylang ylang, in terms of natural perfumery, I literally only needed one part in 32, and I could still smell it, and that was enough. One part, like 3% of the overall essential oil blend was enough for ylang ylang to get the effect I wanted, you know? So that's what it's about, just, you know, work with it that way. I think in certainly, yeah, harmony, I would say, because I know sometimes, a lot of times people talk about balancing effects, and I think it depends what you mean exactly with balancing, because there's different balancing of what, for example, but I like harmony because there's a sense that, yeah, but especially, you know, harmony, of course, in this context, on that emotional level and between the mind and the emotion when they're in conflict, and especially more than anything, when you feel your emotions are overwhelming your mind, that is a key indicator for lavender, you know, that panicky feeling. And in term energetically, lavender really excels for just releasing that pent up stress that you, especially you feel in your chest and your heart when you get tensed up, or, you know, it's wonderful for that because that's where it really relaxes you, especially in the chest and the heart. And indeed, it is good for people who, you know, are prone maybe to palpitations or tachycardia, high blood pressure. I mean, you know, of course, depending on the individual, we do the whole TCM diagnosis to look really what's going on underneath. But very often, when you have those symptoms, especially if the tongue is a little bit red, right? Because the lavender is also cooling, and you've got palpitations, a little bit of tachycardia, and especially any feeling of stress and tension in the chest. Lavender's really good in that way. So, of course, I'm just going to close the door again. So, and it's funny because I've been doing this course with Prabodh Satyal on adulteration. It's every Saturday, and I actually had it this morning. And he pointed out, this is reflective of this, but I think he said that, well, I know he said, I'm just making sure I have the right thing, but that, for instance, France exports twice as much true lavender as it produces. Get it? France actually exports twice as much true lavender than it actually produces, because half of it, of what's exported, is adulterated, is synthetic, you know, and it's called true lavender, but it's really like a reconstruction, you know. It's probably lavandin with the which is the hybrid, cheaper to produce version, with maybe some increased amount of linolyl acetate. This is the photo I took place. I'm sorry. It's just outside. I took this photo just outside the village of Salt, more on in Western Provence, near closer to like Orange and Marseille. That's a valley where it's really an area full of, yeah, actually it's especially small farms producing true lavender, but close to the Plateau de Valençol, where they have the big fields of the lavandin, you know. But this is just outside the village of Salt, Sault, and near the estate of Malta Hotzel, which where I've taken students a couple of times, or groups, I should say, for exploring the lavender and the distillation in his Auto de Provençal. That's It's quite a big estate. That's one part of it. There's some kind of housing there too, and yeah, just giving you a picture of it, and with the Mediterranean, that intense sunlight that the aromatic plants thrive on. And this is that village in the center of this region of Provence, and actually full, I think, throughout the summer, but I think we were there at the Lavender Festival as well. So it's very much part of the culture to use all these different herbs in different ways in cooking and for health, and really in many different ways. Yeah, so this is one. I think this is a field of Malti. As I said, well, he's the founder of the Oshadi essential oil brand that specializes in a big range of organic oils and has 30, about, I think, they're in 30 different countries. But yeah, they're a good, reliable source. Anyway, that's his field, and there you can see the harvesting with the mechanized harvester. And of course, lavender is dried in the sun for 2 to 3 days, which increases the yield of essential oil. Yeah, and that's just a small unit on Malta's property that we got to see some distillation there, and you can see the more than a golden ring, a golden band on top of floating on the hydrosol. This is a famous abbey, de Sanank, in the region, that you could see that because it was lavender was like a medicine. It was always planted close to the monastery because this is where people came for healthcare for centuries in the Middle Ages. It was the monasteries that you would go to for a lot of your healthcare, and the monastery often would have gardens full of medicinal plants for that reason. Lavender derived from lavandula, most likely in turn from lavare, to wash, although there's a possibility of it relating to lividus or bluish, which is interesting because I've got this new idea of what I'm calling the blue fragrance energy, which I think is there in lavender, that kind of light, floral, fresh, airy quality. And even though we are doing it under the moon, because I think it works a lot on that level. It does have why it's also good to help harmonize your feelings and your mind is that it's also got the mercury comes in, which Culpeper identified, the nervous system, so good for the nervous system. In medieval times, lavender was pounded together with soapwort, to make a washing compound. Now, the poor people had few bathing facilities other than the local well. So to bathe properly, medieval men and women who could afford to went to the bathhouse. And picture a cellar with like a low ceiling, iron chandeliers or candle stands, a huge hearth hung with cauldrons, each giving off a different perfume: lavender, attar of rose, vetiver, and musk, etc. And there were curtain booths even that had a clothing rack, a table with fruit, a wine, soap and oils, and a wooden tub that could accommodate 2 people. Yeah, so it didn't have the best reputation often, but a certainly very aromatic history. First mentioned in the 3rd century BC by Theophrastus, although it was originally mentioned was actually spike lavender, was mentioned by by Theophrastus, because it wasn't, I don't think it was until about the 16th century that Angustifolia gets mentioned. And the first monograph printed in 1790. And then in 1826, you had the La Sarraz grouped lavandula into 12 species in different sections. And primarily what we're interested in, you know, in terms of the medicinal plant emphasis, of course, is the true lavender, which really is, you know, in the minority really of what's available. It's actually the intermedia here, lavandin, which is 95% of lavender oil, at least, is actually lavandin. It's really technically the hybrid. Similar chemistry. It's got some higher constituents that you would find in the spiked lavender, because the spiked lavender is one of its parents. So the intermedia is a hybrid between, well, I'm sorry, I put it there. That's good, helpful. Angustifolia and latifolia. So it's a tiny bit more camphoraceous, even though, yeah, it's still relaxing. But really, you know, the fussy people or the purists or true aromatherapists, I suppose, would like to have always the true. That's the angustifolia that does often grow. It grows at higher altitude, so it's, you know, often not as easy to cultivate. A true population angustifolia means that each in a field of a cultivated field, each plant is individual. You know, in many cases you have clonal lavender, clonal lavandin. That means that every plant is genetically the same, which is beneficial when it comes to harvesting, because it all is flowering at the same time. But the downside to clonal fields of lavender and other plants is that if there's a virus or a fungal, you know, some sort of fungal invasion, if it affects one plant, it's going to most likely going to affect the whole field, because they're all genetically the same. When population fields of lavender is, again, each plant's different, so it has a different genetic makeup and therefore a different ability to resist a given pathogen. So it doesn't mean that the whole field gets wiped out. So, you know, there's all those considerations that make up the difference to that. But by and large, lavender is just easier to produce and therefore cheaper. And that's the other. Now, among these, the other essential oil, not so commonly used, but which is I've used, you know, and taught, which is sturtius, Lavandula sturtius, which is actually one of the oldest mentioned, and it's specifically more. That's also called, confusingly, well, Spanish lavender is a common name, but Lavandula sturtius is best to use in a way to be certain. We're speaking of the same. It's good to use obviously the botanical name, sturtius, and that's very, in particular, good as a expectorant, especially when you want a cooling effect, like what we call in TCM phlegm heat. You know, it's rich in fenchone, which is good as a mucolytic. If you've got bronchitis or a cough with sticky yellow phlegm, you want something that's cooling and mucolytic to help clear the phlegm, but in a gentle way. A bit like the verbenone chemotype of rosemary chemotype verbenone. They are both good for what we call phlegm heat, you know. Hildegard, very, of course, very famous, and sorry, just a bit, has an intriguing history as well, because she was quite revolutionary as an abbess, because originally she was, can read about her life, but of course, she was a polymath in being, of course, a composer, a philosopher, a mystic, as well as a botanist and a herbal physician for the time. And as her original monastery, she was in a way, well, she was led a kind of rebellion in a way of the nuns who felt like they got always second pickings when it came to food, but the monks got all the best of, whatever it was. They dominated the monastery. And she was popular enough, I think, to convince the deacon of this province of Germany to allow her to create her own abbey, and as a rebel. So she was really, visionary in that way. And he actually allowed her to do that. And the funny thing is that all the nuns followed her. But apparently the nuns were the ones that had dowries from husbands that had maybe passed away. So they had the money. So the poor monks were left with probably bread and water for a while. I don't know. But anyway, so it's a great story about her intrepid attitude, and always interesting to reference her recommendations. And when she says pure character, it's interesting. I think that's that albedo effect as well, again, of releasing those kind of toxic energies when you really get stressed up, when due to stress and nervous tension. So Gerard, another famous English herbalist, I've got this version thick at home of a version that was originally printed in the 1930s, but the very original was from 1597. He wrote here, the distilled water of, or the hydrosol, does help the passion and panting of the heart. There you go. You see, the palpitations prevaileth against giddiness. That's if you're feeling dizzy due to feeling hot and overwhelmed. If you're dizzy because you're low energy, very tired, or a bit anemic, that's when you want rosemary. But if you're like overwhelmed, in that sense emotionally, or panicky, that's when you want lavender for that kind of giddiness. And of course, it's also, now there's evidence that it's anticonvulsant. So it's interesting. He recommended it for tremors. He recommends again the hydrosol. Well, interesting about losing your voice, because in TCM, the heart controls the tongue and being able to express yourself. And I have seen a connection in my practice over the years. Yeah. Between when there's a heart problem, it can affect your tongue and your speech a little bit on occasion. I've seen that. But tremblings and passions of the heart, fainting and swooning, all those things, of course, we know about, as well as headache. Even even not only being drank, but smelled unto. And he refers to mercury. I think it has a dual function, but part of mercury, of course, is it rules the nervous system. Yeah. So, of course, it does work on that level too. This is just some information about Culpeper. A bit like Gatterfoss was concerned about the poor and the health of the poor. Well, Gatterfoss really promoted lavender cultivation and the distillation of lavender oil in the France in the 1930s and so forth, because he could see it was not very known then. This was before lavender oil became fashionable. And part of his motivation was to bring work to the really, in many cases, the poor agricultural workers of Provence, really, he saw them as being neglected somehow and, you know, downtrodden by being not having an outlet for their goods and so forth. Anyway, and Culpeper was similar to would treat the poor around England. Now this is these, I don't know how many of these slides I put in, but because I've got more, and in fact I've got a paper I can upload and give you the link to in the follow-up email about this, but it's the background, the research background, excuse me. Yeah, it's the research background to how lavender in gel cap form became really like this over-the-counter medicine in Europe, starting in Germany around 2010. This particular research was done, which I'll be referring to. I think I give one example there, which was one of the original ones, a 6-week study that compared the effectiveness. A silexin is just lavender oil, that's what they're calling it. So they compared that, this product they called silexin, pure lavender oil in a gel cap, with a Ativan, you know, which is a common medication for general anxiety disorder. Finding it was just as effective. And of course, that's very significant considering all the side effects. We'll see that these pharmacological interventions have their serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And so for that, so now we find, and I bought these before here in the US, made this Lavella product, and they're capsules containing 80 milligrams, which is about 2 to 3 drops that you take a couple of times a day as an over-the-counter medicine for anxiety. And they had to, you know, that was a big thing in Europe and the European Union to get that effectively lavender oil licensed, not on basis of a subscription, but as an over-the-counter remedy, medicine, intervention. And this is only one of seven. I mean, there's been tons of research since. That's just an original one. So I didn't want to overload it on that level because there's too much otherwise. But it works a lot on the serotonin. And of course, again, the serotonin pathways, well, are in particular important for, again, mood and memory, just like we were talking about, as well as sleep and cognition. Yeah. And by the way, very important for serotonin is your gut health, because that's where 90% through tryptophan, 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut by the microbiome, you see. So you can see how important that is, because that's such an important brain chemical that regulates your mood. So of course, eating a broad, especially vegetable and fruit rich rainbow kind of diet that's got all the different flavonoids and everything to protect your DNA, that's very important as well, especially the neuroprotective and anti-neuroinflammatory herbs and foods. So that's all important as well. And as I said, drugs like Prozac, and they are among the big 3. By the way, I'm not trying to be like RFK Jr. and preach against them, because if some people need them, they need them. But it can be thought of as a way of weaning people off who want to come off Prozac and the like, because there are downsides, it's true. For instance, if you keep taking these drugs, then the density of your receptors that your brain relies, that your serotonin relies on the receptor sites for its action can actually, if you flood your system with it, artificial way of boosting your serotonin, your brain reacts by making, by decreasing or making less receptors. So we end up being less able to actually metabolize the serotonin even in the long run. And so that's why some of these drugs can have these effects, like side effects, cardiovascular, sleep disturbance, sexual dysfunction, and weakening of the bones and so forth. And I always put this joke in this is the side effect of lavender. And this was on a trip, one of the trips with the students I went with. I took that photo of them when we went to visit Lavender Field in England. Yeah, just it's just supposed to be a joke that this is the side effect. Yeah, happiness or excess joy. I don't know. So the feeling of calm composure that I think that we can associate with lavender, we can sense that in the flowers as a symbol of that equanimity. Interestingly associated too with Virgo, I think in particular, which is also the sign of hygiene, health, balance, and harmony. I won't read that. That's just a famous poem I put in, which is nice, as a sign of faithful. But thou art emblem of the friend who, whatsoever our lot, the balm of faithful love will lend, and true and constant to the end, may die, but alters not. Yeah, so it's to do with faithfulness. And this is one that I wrote too, which I would read, but I think we're running out of time a bit. But at life's just stressful crossroads, this gentle guide calms and steadies us on our journey home. It settles the soul that restless did roam and restores the wholeness that fears divide. And yeah, and that I'm referring in part of one moment there to the root diggers, which were the herb gatherers of ancient Greece. And interestingly, this word to lustrate, again, to purify, but through a ceremonial washing, for example. And so, as I said, I think the moon in the floral way of being anxiolytic, but harmonizing it with Mercury, harmonizing it with the mental realm. You see, I think that's where lavender is very good, to balance those two out, especially where again, emotions are feeling are overwhelming the mind and contributing to the wrong decisions. These are some of the other slides of the symbolism as well, history, particularly now going on to Rose, starting out the trusting heart. And I think trust is that yin ability of love to kind of, sustain or to be a residence for love in the sense of trust, to be able to hold that. And of course, when trust is wounded and we lose trust, then Rose is a very much a specific for that to help gradually restore, through self-love, that sense of trust. This is just a recipe going back to the time of Dioscorides. Yeah. Mentioning some of its therapeutic benefits and its astringent cooling nature, use as a lotion for headache. Yeah, and used in ancient Rome in that way as well, we'll see. Especially right after the Rose Festival when people had too much to drink, the Rosalia. But especially the Persian physicians with, as a gentle tonic of the heart as well. Rose water as well was commonly used to treat colds and other common conditions, including melancholia, which we can think of in modern ways like depression, etc. And of course, as a blood cleanser, it's always indicated for many different inflammatory skin conditions. We can Ibn Sina, better known as Avicenna, my friend in England. He's founder of a company, Avicenna. Joe Nasser. Joe Nasser is originally from Lebanon, where he's got rose gardens, to produce the oil. But his company in England, one of the top 3 herbal companies with headquarters in Wales, I've seen he's very keen on distillation, especially. But his company is called Avicenna, So Avicenna is like really the most famous of all the Persian physicians. And so he was very much associated with recommending rose, for example, here for more like psoriasis, skin eruptions. So this is some background to Avicenna, known as the Prince of Physicians. A nice quote from him I like: the soul. Oh, this is very much like what we were talking about, I think, earlier on, and the moon, the connection with the soul, the moon, and the body. The soul permeates the substance of the bodily organs and flows through them as essence flows in roses, oil in olives, or fire in charcoal. Rose was a valuable crop in the Middle Ages, and of course the source of rose water, oil, and lovely rose jam as well. It appears in this, I've got, well, not an original copy, but this medieval handbook, that the Tasuinum Sanitatis, where it's recommended, including, for example, for cramp and paralysis, again, reflecting its strong, it has the antispasmodic, not again, but I'm mentioning it in this context. Another antispasmodic, anticonvulsant remedy like lavender. A quote here we have from Saint Hildegard, which is, I love, where she recommends that in the morning or at daybreak, pluck a rose petal and place it on your eyes. It draws out the humor and makes them clear. And one who is inclined to wrath should take rose and a little sage and pulverize them. When the wrath is rising, he should hold the powder to his nostrils. The sage lessens the wrath, and the rose makes him happy. I'm sure the rose is good for the anger as well. And that's one of her illustrations. Gerard mentioning rose water for the heart, refreshing the spirits. And then here again, Gerard referring to, especially to its cool, moist energy. And especially, well, as a decoction in particular, it's good for intestinal inflammation and constipation. Culpeper, the great astrological physician, also recommending it in particular, again, especially for assuaging heat and inflammation, for its cooling property, roses. So the first roses were brought from Persia to Thrace, now Bulgaria, in the 4th century, and especially Kazanlak. Now, that's one place I haven't been. It's on my bucket list, the Valley of the Roses. And it was there that they developed what became, for many centuries, the distillation, the common distillation of rose, otto, the essential oil, using the copper alembic or
Gulpan. Yeah. And so it really became the leading dominant source of rose otto essential oil in Europe, whereas the south of France, this is all the distillation, remained, dominant in the production of the rose absolute, which is from the Rosa centifolia. But the rose otto, the essential oil, is dependent on this species, of course, the classic. Here we have fields in Bulgaria showing the Rosa damascena. And so it's the damask rose, which is, as I say, that's the source of the true rose otto. You have of course, for rosehip oil, which is also incredibly therapeutic in a different way, we have the Rosa rugosa or the beach rose. See that a lot in England, for example, and similar, I think, to the dog rose, very similar species. And of course, the sea being rich in these wonderful fatty acids that, of course, make it one of the best ones, polyunsaturated omega fatty acids that make it exceptional, really, totally exceptional. And even Dr. Prabodh was agreeing with this for skincare. But the rose absolute, which is the solvent extracted rose, okay, usually, standard extraction vehicle being hexane, is the standard solvent, hexane. Although, as I've said, that same company I mentioned earlier, Oshadi, do have absolutes, floral absolutes. These are those flowers that are too delicate to be steam distilled or even hydro distilled, like rose. So here we have, and here they were actually doing jasmine on this occasion, but photos I was taking in India on a tour I went on. And here we can see the solvent extraction of the hexane. But Oshadi, that company I mentioned, they do ones that they use instead alcohol. So that doesn't have, hexane is really like gasoline, petrol at the stage. It has that similar smell. And there's a way they can purify the final result and remove hexane, but there's always tiny traces left, so it's not really it's not totally pure in that way that we like, in terms of natural medicine and aromatherapy. But it's a different way. It's specific for especially some of these flowers, even like tuberose, which we're going to touch on, because they're just not suitable otherwise for steam distillation. These are some of now, the rose is just, I think we'll finish with rose. If we could just, when we come back next time, we'll do neroli, okay? That's the only one we didn't get to, because I think it was good to have the sharing we did, get to know each other, because we will be looking at each other's charts as well later as we go forward. So thank you so much for coming, though. So I'm going to finish with this important points of rose, and especially ending up looking at it's both lunar, the lunar aspect again, as well as the Venus side of it, and I think they intersect a lot. But it was going back, although I think fundamentally, that the reason I think their lunar is so important, because that more than anything, this rose in particular works so much on our emotional level and the heart level, and that is just so lunar. But of course, in other ways, on archetypal level, and it's through its femininity and enhancing creativity and fertility. It has a lot of Venusian traits, and indeed, intuitively, the ancient Greeks, dedicated it to Aphrodite. in particular, who became Venus for the Romans. And there was, yeah. So, and it played a role. Roses were offered as an offering, a rich, at this time of the Levatio, again, ritual cleansing. You find in ancient Greek and Roman poetry, roses adorned intimate love scenes. And the interesting thing is that they were marked as just for their beauty, but also, just going to close this window. Also, they represented through the petals could easily fly away the beauty, but also the brevity of life as well for the ancient Greeks as well. And this is beautiful. And I know Debs was talking about like rebirth, and I think that's part of this lunar cycle, isn't it? How it rose as a big theme for rebirth. And you even had this celebration that was particular for women. The Adonia was mourning of Adonis, celebrated only by women. This was an opportunity that I read that quoted here, an opportunity for the unbridled expression of emotion in this strictly circumcised life of women, lots of hard work, doing their duty, as a way of releasing that. Some of these ancient festivals were important for that, to keep order and harmony in the society as a kind of release valve. So it's a way of celebrating that. And Adonis, similar, was a youthful vegetation god, mortally wounded by a boar. Again, rose always comes up. A red rose emerged from each of Adonis's drops of blood, and a white rose from the tears of Aphrodite, his lover. So you always got this beautiful symbolism, But there is a connection, many connections between rose and the blood as well, through the color, but also the fact that rose is a great blood cleanser and alterative as a herb. And then you had the Rose Festival, which again was a chance of releasing. I know it looks like, total hedonism, but, in reality, it was a chance for the community to, I think that's part of the carnival, isn't it? You need that moments of celebration to hold the community together. And it evolved from ancestor worship. But again, roses would be adorned and decorated everywhere. The roses played a big part. Even afterwards, that because of the prolonged libations, roses were also used afterwards to counter the intoxicating effect of wine. And there was also this idea that rose could help keep secret, which is indeed why we have, especially in England, the older homes, in the middle, we call it the rose, the ceiling rose. The rose symbolically was always there, hung in the middle of the ceiling for if you had a secret meeting. If you put a rose hanging up where the light in the middle of the ceiling meant that everything that is talked about in this room must not leave the room. And it kind of evolved even into the part of architecture called the ceiling rose that the light would hang from. Yeah, you may have known that, of course. So it played a role in funerals as well. And it was symbolic of daybreak, the goddess of the dawn. And I mentioned kind of like, eternal rebirth and spring. That's part of that spring-like rejuvenation. The early Christians rejected rose because they carried this idea of, getting drunk, would you believe? But gradually it was adopted, like many flowers, to represent Virgin Mary. So there was this idea of the rose of modesty and the mystical rose. The white roses too, would symbolize her virginity. Red roses, her charity. And as a kind, it also had this other symbolism, even of paradise. In Dante's classic of world literature, the paradise is even envisioned as having the shape of a rose. There is a link with, and this was observed in this herbal book even, that they believe that this link with rose, this idea that it is symbolic of paradise reflects how it's a good, balanced, gentle medicine that's also cordial and strengthening. And I've got one book of poems I've got of Hafez. He was one of the most famous of the Persian poets. Beautiful poetry, like, yeah, spiritual, but somehow romantic too. And got to be careful you get the right edition of the true poems of Hafez, because there's kind of new age versions that are not, similar name, but not quite the same. But it's not just his poetry, but a central motif of the ghazal. And the ghazal, yeah, was a particular kind of poetry, often, and with different motifs, but often there was the nightingale who yearns, sings to the rose and yearns for the rose. And in other words, that was symbolic, a mystical language of the soul longing for eternal beauty that the rose represented. And indeed, in Persian, in Islam, it was the paradise was seen as a rose garden, literally as a rose garden. And yeah, it's a place of, I think, perfection, I suppose, and serenity. And indeed, come to Carl Jung, but it also became a symbol, even in alchemy, okay, of this combining of the red and the white rose. This mystical union I was already talking about between the sun and the moon. It's the soul et luna, the spirit and soul. Yeah. So it really had a role there too. And then with Jung too, who studied alchemy a lot, the rose, what represented psychological wholeness, a transcendent unity, symbolized also by the wheel and the conjunction of the sun and moon. Yeah. And it does have that integrating effect on us, I think, in its action and fragrance. And Anthroposophist, that's influenced by the writings of Steiner, wrote, "Wherever you look, we meet harmony with the rose, form and substance in equilibrium. Its noble scent combines gentleness with strength." Yeah. And that's a good reflection of it being like a yin tonic, tonifying, but of that cool, moist energy. And this is just some from my book that, here I'm talking about how it's good for emotional wounds when rejection or loss has injured our capacity to self-nurture. It brings that comfort, and that astringency kind of binds the heartstrings of the mind, or what we call the Shen. And astrologically, Culpeper wrote, in his opinion, red roses under Jupiter, damask, under Venus. I think Venus is a big influence there as well. They got white rose under the moon, of course. That would be, a connection that one would have made from his perspective. And Rosa alba is quite a rare oil. It's a lovely white rose oil, a very light, sweet, gorgeous, like the Oshadi do some as well. Yeah, but I think it does bring together and helps unite, particularly even in charts where, for example, just like with lavender, if you've got any chart where the moon and Mercury, in the case of lavender, may be in opposition or square, and you want to help to harmonize those, here, especially the moon and Venus in particular. But the moon in the sense of its ability to calm and comfort, tonify the yin, and so forth, as well as nurture and enhance the capacity for intimacy. All those things very lunar, but Venusian as well for these other reasons, and the fact it's a uterine tonic, and it's the fact that it's sensualizing. And yeah, I think, well, of course, even, I think it is a good oil to help on, give, well, depending on the condition or constitution of the woman, to enhance fertility in different ways. Yeah. And then I've added Neptune. I think, and we've seen there's a lot of spiritual love qualities that it radiates as well through much of its symbolism. And so we can't really, I think, deny it having a Neptunian quality too, I think, in terms of, especially in enhancing emotional empathy, yeah, as well as perhaps that feeling of mystical love and devotion. Anyway, and I think that's obviously why it's again so great for those who are experiencing that deep loss, and have a certain spiritual despair in their soul and need this kind of healing that Rose possesses. So anyway, thank you so much. I have gone over a bit there by 8 minutes, and we will catch up with Neroli next time. But yeah, and with any final comments or questions?
I popped into my head like rose, like it's like the rosebud to the rose hips feels very lunar
Oh yeah.
because it has that whole cycle and all parts of it are medicine.
Right, yes. Oh, yeah, oh, no, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good point as well. Yeah. And it's the other thing that's amazing is I think something else that is very lunar in its richness is all the different things that it can be made into. As we saw with the oil and the jam and all those different products that are both culinary, therapeutic, and of course cosmetic as well. And it crosses just about every dimension of our being, doesn't it? In that way, its benefits do and uses do. I know that's true of a lot of oils, but rose in particular, I think. Yeah.
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 So expensive.
I know that is the thing.
So expensive though,
Yeah.
but and there's so much of rose is adulterated, and it's
Yeah.
unfortunate people still continue to buy in supermarkets thinking they're getting rose when they pay $20 for
No.
10. Oh, before you knew.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But I put it in my skincare, and it's hands down my favorite oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really great for a lot of different, well, for eczema and psoriasis as well on that level. Yeah, for skin inflammation, absolutely. And yeah.
I had brought back 4 large bags of dehydrated organic roses from my trip to Bolivia. And
Ah,
I taught a 6-hour rose medicine workshop, and we made all kinds of things with the roses. It was joyous.
Oh,
It
how
was
wonderful.
incredible.
amazing.
Yeah, was that
And
was that in,
also last year, that was a couple of weeks ago,
oh wow, was that in
when I
Pennsylvania?
did the workshop. Yeah, I did the workshop here. I had been there in February, but I had also been there back in November for the Day of the Dead. Coincidentally, I happened to be there for the Day of the Dead, and you would not believe the amazing displays of rose bouquets all over the cemeteries. I mean, thousands and thousands of bouquets of roses. It was
Wow,
such a beautiful, reverent,
wow.
joyous event to be a part of. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Go to Bolivia in November. It's incredible to be at the cemeteries.
Wow, that's amazing. God.
And is
What time of
Yeah,
year
it
did
was
you say that
amazing.
was again? September? What
And
time?
no, Day of the Dead is
Oh,
November
November.
5th.
Yeah. I remember now because I was in
Yeah.
Mexico once for the day, but I don't remember that so many roses like you're describing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I think they celebrate it in different places differently, but
Yeah.
in southern Bolivia, the cemeteries, which were enormous, and to be at the markets on the days leading up to the Day of the Dead, to see all of the women creating these rose bouquets, they were
Wow.
massive.
Wow.
I'll send you some pictures. It
No,
was
please, we'll
incredibly
distribute
beautiful.
them. Yeah, I'll put them, we'll share them with the group. Thanks.
Yeah.
Were you going
Well,
to say something, Nasli, just before we go?
In Turkey, of course, you know, especially in Anatolia, Sparta, there's very big and huge rose farms.
Yeah.
And the first week of the July every year, there's some little festival or harvesting celebration, and it's very important. That's our religion because Prophet Muhammad is symbolized by rose. But unfortunately, especially our funeral, we offered other rose, but it's very low quality. Then in my country, include me, there's no good remembers about rose smells because very bad quality for and every funeral and the boring something. Uh, then I loved rose oil now, but I try to love it as approximately 5 years. I can't because all bad memories come. And
oh,
in our cemetery, cypress and rose
Oh,
in
nice. Oh,
my.
Cyprus and rose. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm glad you mentioned, thanks, Nasli, because Turkey is, you do get rose oil from Turkey. Absolutely. It's another important producing country. I think both Rose Otto and Rose Absolute. So it is a source for oil. That's true. But thank you. And I know part of it. I didn't realize it was so important in your symbolism in that way as well. Amazing. Thanks. Okay. Well, thanks everybody. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks, or I think it's two weeks. Yeah, it is 2 weeks. So. Yeah, well, let's do a quick picture, shall we? So let's do group selfie together. So take a screenshot. If you look at your green light there, okay, ready? One, two, well, it should be a green light where your camera is. One, two, three. Okay, great, thanks. Okay, I'll send the recording.
Great class. Really great
you.
class.
Oh, thank you. Take
Fantastic
care.
class. Thank
Lots of
Thank
fun. Thank you.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Bye.